Sometimes it feels like the world didn't slowly lose its appeal. It feels like it flipped a switch. One day, things still carried weight, texture, surprise. The next, everything started to look familiar in a way that wasn't comforting, just dull. You land in a new city and realize you already know it. Same shops, same layouts, same food courts attached to the same glass and steel stations. Even the people feel interchangeable, dressed in the same silhouettes, moving with the same habits, speaking in the same rhythms. What used to feel discovered now feels delivered. Places arrive pre-explained, pre-reviewed, pre-approved. Nothing asks much of you anymore. You are never lost, rarely confused, and almost never required to sit with uncertainty. And while that sounds like progress, it comes with a quiet cost. Mystery doesn't survive total transparency. There was a time when the world felt bigger simply because so much of it was hidden. Not hidden in a dramatic sense, but hidden in the ordinary way things were once inaccessible. A place could exist mostly as a name, a photograph in a book, a shape on a map. That lack of detail did something important. It created space for imagination. You filled the gaps yourself. Wonder lived in those gaps. As a kid, even a nearby city could feel vast. Not because it was dangerous or exotic, but because you didn't fully know it yet. And beyond that were countries you might never see, oceans you might never cross, cultures reduced to a paragraph and a grainy image. That distance mattered. It made curiosity active rather than passive. You didn't consume the world, you reached toward it. Now the reaching is gone. Before you go anywhere, you've already seen it from every angle. Streets mapped down to the meter, restaurants ranked, views drone shot. Entire lives streamed from places you once would have wondered about for years. The unknown has been replaced by previews, and previews quietly drain desire. When everything is visible, nothing feels distant. When nothing feels distant, nothing feels significant. This isn't just about travel, it's about how experience itself has changed. Life increasingly feels like moving through a catalog of options you already understand. You pick, you consume, you move on. Efficient, predictable, flat, and then you ask the question that keeps circling in the background. If everything is available, why does so little feel meaningful? Maybe the problem isn't that the world has less to offer. Maybe it's that we removed the very conditions that once made things feel alive. And if that's true, the real question isn't what we should go see next. It's what we lost when we stopped not knowing. And that raises an uncomfortable thought worth sitting with. What if excitement didn't disappear because the world changed, but because the way we encounter it did? The strange thing is, none of this happened because technology arrived suddenly. We already had machines, screens, and systems decades ago. The shift came when technology stopped being a tool and quietly became a lens. It didn't just help us see the world, it decided what was worth seeing. There was a time when information came in fragments. You knew a little, guessed a lot, and filled in the rest with imagination. That uncertainty wasn't a flaw, it was the engine. When you didn't know exactly what something would be like, anticipation did real work. Desire had time to build. Curiosity had room to breathe. Now, almost nothing is allowed to remain incomplete. Any place, idea, or experience can be examined in advance, stripped down to details, ratings, and images. You can inspect the destination before you ever feel it. You can watch someone else walk its streets, eat its food, react on your behalf. By the time you arrive, the experience feels less like discovery and more like confirmation. You are not asking, "What is this?" You are checking whether reality matches the preview. And usually, it does. This is sold to us as empowerment. More information, more control, fewer surprises. But surprise was never the enemy. Surprise was what made experiences memorable. When everything is known in advance, the nervous system stays flat. Nothing spikes curiosity. Nothing demands adaptation. You are safe, informed, and oddly unmoved. Think about how rarely you feel truly lost anymore. Lost not in a dangerous sense, but in a psychological one. Unsure, slightly disoriented, forced to pay attention. Those moments used to be common. They required effort. You had to read situations, people, environments. That effort created involvement. And involvement created meaning. Today, friction is designed out of life. Navigation apps prevent confusion. Algorithms prevent boredom by feeding you what you already like. Reviews prevent disappointment. Filters prevent discomfort. But meaning does not come from smoothness. It comes from engagement, from resistance, from situations that don't immediately yield to you. When everything works perfectly, nothing leaves a mark. So, when people say life feels flatter now, it's tempting to blame age, nostalgia, or personal failure. But that explanation is too convenient. The structure of experience itself has changed. We optimized for ease and predictability, and in doing so, we flattened the emotional range of daily life. The uncomfortable implication is this: if excitement once depended on uncertainty, effort, and risk, then no amount of new content will fix the emptiness we feel now. And that leads to a harder question, one we usually avoid. If convenience quietly eroded meaning, what else did we trade away without noticing? There's a concept most of us no longer recognize because we rarely experience it firsthand. Effort that carries meaning. Not effort as productivity, not hustle, not optimization, but effort as a condition for depth. In the past, reaching something worthwhile usually demanded time, risk, or discomfort. Not because life was cruel, but because the world was uncertain. Journeys took longer, plans failed more often. Outcomes weren't guaranteed. And because of that, experiences asked something from you before they gave anything back. Travel is an easy example. Today, moving across the planet is closer to a logistical task than a life event. You book, you board, you arrive. Delays are irritations, not trials. The goal is to minimize friction, to treat the journey as dead time you endure, so you can get to the real experience faster. But historically, the journey was the experience. Months at sea, routes that could change, real chances of failure. That uncertainty wasn't romantic. It was demanding. And because it was demanding, it shaped the people who went through it. The risks, the waiting, the lack of control gave the destination weight. Now, contrast that with how we talk about travel today. We describe it as something we do between work obligations. We want it efficient, safe, predictable. When something goes wrong, we feel cheated, not challenged. And yet we wonder why it doesn't leave the same imprint on us. This pattern extends far beyond travel. Dating, for instance, once required exposure. You had to read rooms, notice signals, risk embarrassment. Rejection wasn't abstract, it was immediate. That risk made connection intense, it forced presence. Now, much of that risk has been abstracted away. Swipes replace glances. Matches replace courage. Rejection arrives silently, without confrontation, and interest can disappear without explanation. It's easier. But easier does not mean deeper. When nothing is at stake, attention thins out. People become replaceable, not because they are shallow, but because the structure encourages disposability. What we lost wasn't difficulty for its own sake. We lost the kind of difficulty that creates involvement. The kind that demands adaptation, patience, and emotional investment. Without those, experiences slide past us without anchoring. This is where the idea of spiritual effort matters. When life constantly challenged you, you had to engage with it fully. You couldn't outsource thinking, decision-making, or resilience. Today, many of those demands have been removed. Life runs smoother, but it also asks less of us as participants. And here's the uncomfortable part. Meaning doesn't come from comfort. It comes from friction that matters. From situations where your presence changes the outcome. So if life feels strangely weightless now, the issue might not be that things are worse. It might be that too little is required of us, which raises a question we usually avoid. If effort is the price of depth, what happens to a life designed to remove effort wherever possible? One of the clearest places where modern life feels thinner is in how we connect with other people. Especially when it comes to attraction, dating, and intimacy. Not long ago, meeting someone required real presence. You had to be somewhere. You had to notice, hesitate, misread signals, and risk rejection. That risk mattered. It made attention sharp. When interest formed, it felt charged, because it wasn't easily replaceable. Today, connection works differently. Potential partners appear in endless supply, neatly filtered and endlessly available. You don't encounter people so much as scroll through them. Attraction becomes a quick judgment, often stripped of context, voice, or atmosphere. And because there is always another option waiting, interest rarely deepens before it moves on. This abundance is often described as freedom. More choice, more control. But psychologically, it works against depth. When nothing forces you to commit, everything remains provisional. Depth requires closing doors. Modern systems are built to keep every door open. The result is a quiet erosion of seriousness. Conversations begin easily and end without explanation. Attention flickers. People feel interchangeable, not because they are shallow, but because the structure encourages disposability. When everyone is replaceable, no one feels fully chosen, and this mindset spreads. Friendships, work, even identity begin to follow the same logic. We curate ourselves for visibility instead of understanding. Being seen replaces being known. Engagement replaces intimacy. Life becomes busy, social, and strangely hollow at the same time. What's unsettling is how normal this feels while it's happening. There's no dramatic collapse. Just a gradual smoothing out of friction. Everything becomes easier to enter and easier to leave. And experiences that cost little rarely leave a mark. So, when people talk about feeling lonely despite constant connection, the problem isn't a lack of interaction, it's a lack of stakes. Because when walking away is effortless, staying stops feeling meaningful. And that leaves a final question hanging. If our relationships now follow the same convenience-driven logic as everything else, what kind of life does that logic ultimately produce? By now, a pattern should be visible. It's not just that individual experiences feel thinner. It's that life itself is slowly being pressed into a single, familiar shape. Walk through almost any major city, and the details blur together. The same brands, the same cafes, the same architecture of convenience. Travel no longer feels like crossing into another way of living, but like visiting a slightly rearranged version of home. Difference survives, but mostly as decoration. This sameness doesn't stop at places. It shows up in taste, opinions, and even identity. Algorithms learn what we like and quietly remove what might challenge us. Music, news, entertainment, and people are filtered until the unfamiliar disappears. We call this personalization, but what it really does is narrow the world around us. When you only see what fits you, growth slows. When nothing disrupts you, attention dulls. Over time, life becomes frictionless, predictable, and emotionally muted. You move through it efficiently, but you don't collide with anything that forces change. This is why stimulation keeps increasing while satisfaction keeps dropping. We chase novelty inside a system designed to repeat itself. Different shows, same structure, different cities, same layout, different people, same patterns. It's not boredom from lack of options. It's boredom from too much sameness disguised as variety. And here's the difficult truth. No amount of optimization will fix this. Meaning doesn't emerge from comfort or convenience. It comes from contact with what resists you, with what doesn't immediately fit, with what demands attention, patience, and effort. The modern world is incredibly good at removing those demands. It protects us from getting lost, from waiting, from uncertainty, from failure. But in doing so, it also shields us from depth. So, when life feels flat, the instinct is to look for something new. A new place, a new relationship, a new distraction. But the real issue may not be what you're missing, it may be what you're avoiding. Because a meaningful life doesn't come from endlessly consuming the world. It comes from allowing the world to challenge you again. And the uncomfortable question that remains is this. In a system built to make everything easy, are we still willing to choose what is difficult, simply because it matters?